Coming up on Arirang News. South Korea and the United Nations command member states say there'll be a joint response against any attack that threatens the security of the country, denouncing North Korea's unlawful nuclear and missile programs. Ahead of his trips for overseas diplomacy, President Yoon says at the APEC summit he'll discuss measures that'll help the economy and also seek joint action with APEC leaders against illicit military cooperation between North Korea and Russia. The armed wing of the Palestinian militant group Hamas reportedly proposes freeing up to 70 hostages held in Gaza in return for a 5-day truce with Israel. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with the international efforts to maintain peace on the Korean Peninsula. Defense ministers and representatives from South Korea and the United Nations command member states convened in Seoul on Tuesday, vowing a joint response against any attack that challenges the security of the country. Defense correspondent Choi Min-jung leads us off.
South Korea and the UN command member states have vowed unity against challenges posed on the Korean Peninsula. In a joint statement following the inaugural defense ministerial meeting on Tuesday, defense ministers and representatives declared that they will be united upon any renewal of hostilities or an armed attack on the Korean Peninsula, challenging the principles of the UN and the security of South Korea. The member states reaffirmed that the promise and spirit of the 1953 Armistice Agreement continues to be necessary for the protection of peace and democracy on the Korean Peninsula today, as it was in the past. In a written congratulatory message during the meeting, President Yoon stressed that the UNC is a strong source of power in the defense of South Korea. Meanwhile, Defense Minister Shin Won-sik sent a strong warning to North Korea.
This is a warning to North Korea. Unlike during the Korean War, North Korea is now a member of the UN. Therefore, if it illicitly invades South Korea again, it will be attacking the UNC, a self-contradicting move for a UN member state.
Shin added that Pyongyang's provocations are bound to be followed by strong punishment from the international community centered on the UNC. He also stressed that countries that help North Korea will receive the same punishment. This was echoed by the U.S. Defense Secretary, who expressed deep concerns about the recent growth in military cooperation between North Korea and Russia.
The DPRK is providing lethal aid to Russia to fuel Putin's cruel war of choice against Ukraine. And Russia is providing more support for the DPRK's wide-ranging illicit activities. Now, these activities do not just threaten the ROK, they also erode the rules-based international order that has brought prosperity and peace for the past 70 years.
South Korea on Tuesday hosted the first ever defense ministerial meeting with UNC member states. Defense ministers and representatives of 17 UNC members attended the meeting. The UNC was set up in 1950 to support South Korea against North Korea and now oversees the Korean War armistice. It consists of 17 member states that protected South Korea from armed aggression during the Korean War and fought under one flag to restore international peace. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
And Seoul and Washington are conducting large-scale naval exercises in the East Sea this week. According to the authorities here, the drills began on Monday. Some 10 Korean vessels are taking part, including the Sohae-ryu Seongryung Aegis-equipped destroyer, as well as America's USS Rafael Peralta. The drills are designed to bolster military readiness as the East Sea appears prone to complex warfare situations in which the enemy uses both ships and submarines simultaneously. The joint naval exercises will last until this Thursday. The South Korean government has been mulling over suspending the September 19 Inter-Korea Military Agreement, also known as the Comprehensive Military Agreement, citing North Korea's aggression. And now we're learning that some of the clauses could be suspended if North Korea launches a reconnaissance satellite, which is deemed imminent. Our Kim Jung-sil reports.
The South Korean government is reportedly considering suspending some clauses in the September 19 Inter-Korean Military Agreement if North Korea launches a reconnaissance satellite. Citing a senior government official, Yonhap News reported on Tuesday that a possible lifting of regulations in the CMA governing aerial reconnaissance in areas along the military demarcation line will be discussed, meaning South Korea could resume these operations that are currently prohibited within 25 kilometers from the MDL. An official at the Ministry of Unification also told reporters the same day that the ministry will closely monitor North Korea's moves and comprehensively review necessary measures, while not specifying or clarifying what has been discussed regarding the suspension of the agreement. The official added that the ministry will closely communicate with the Ministry of National Defense, which is in charge of this issue. The comment comes amid recently appointed Defense Minister Shin Won-sik's strong remarks that the CMA severely limits South Korea's real-time monitoring capabilities in the no-fly zone of North Korean provocations. Both South and North Korea agreed in 2018 to cease hostilities on land, sea, and air and establish buffer zones. The agreement prohibits unmanned aerial vehicles from being flown within 10 kilometers of the MDL in western regions and 15 kilometers in eastern areas. Regarding satellite launches, North Korea had announced that it would launch one in October, but this has been delayed. The launch would be Pyongyang's third attempt to put a reconnaissance satellite in orbit. Pundits say it's possible one could be launched around November 18th, which is the country's newly designated Missile Industry Day. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Tomorrow, President Yoon Suk-yeol will be leaving for APEC summit in San Francisco. And when he comes back, he'll only have a day before he leaves for London and Paris. In the run-up to these events, the president says he'll be discussing ways to diversify supply chains and expand trade while seeking joint actions with APEC leaders against illicit military cooperation between North Korea and Russia. Our Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
With a series of overseas trips starting in just a day, President Yoon Suk-yeol emphasized how important they are as he spoke on Tuesday to open a cabinet meeting. First up is the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco.
저는 세계 GDP의 60% 이상을 차지하는 회원국의 정상들이 한데 모이는 이번 회의에서 공급망 다변화와 무역 투자 확대와 같이 우리 경제에 실질적으로 보탬이 되는 협력 방안을 논의할 것입니다.
He also spoke on his state visit to the United Kingdom as he will be returning to Seoul from San Francisco for just one day before departing for London. The South Korea-UK Accord, which already has been announced, will be a key part of the trip and is set to enhance bilateral cooperation going forward.
영국은 유럽의 제2위의 경제 대국임에도 불구하고 우리나라와의 무역 규모는 독일, 이탈리아와의 무역 규모에 미치지 못합니다.
Also after London, he's set to stop by Paris before returning home. This trip is just days before the Bureau International des Expositions vote on who will host the World Expo 2030, and he's set to meet with the voting representatives through an event to deliver his last persuasions on behalf of Busan. In the meantime, President Yoon's interview with the Associated Press was released on the same day, and the written interview highlighted the security aspect of his APEC trip. According to AP, he, quote, slammed the arms exchanges between North Korea and Russia and said he will bring this up during APEC to emphasize what it really means to global security. He said that current global challenges arising from the war in Ukraine, the Israel-Hamas conflict, the climate crisis, and high inflation offer an opportunity for APEC to demonstrate its leadership again by spearheading efforts to overcome crises and to spur innovation through regional cooperation. He also said to AP reinforced countermeasures are needed if North Korea's nuclear and missile technology continues to grow, criticizing the regime's apparent weapons cooperation with Russia. 김도현, Arirang News.
Top diplomats of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan are set to meet in San Francisco on the sidelines of the APEC summit this week. Seoul's Foreign Ministry said Foreign Minister Park Jin will sit down for talks on Tuesday, local time, with his U.S. and Japanese counterparts, Antony Blinken and Yoshiko Kamikawa. They're expected to address the growing concerns on military cooperation between North Korea and Russia, as Pyongyang is believed to have provided Moscow with weapons in exchange for technology for its nuclear and missile programs. The situation in the Middle East and economic cooperation between the three countries are also likely to be on the agenda. Also in San Francisco, this week's high-stakes meeting between the leaders of the U.S. and China on the margins of the APEC summit is expected to restore bilateral military communication channels. And China may resume purchases of a U.S. plane maker Boeing's aircraft as a sign of improvement in bilateral relations. Our Peunji has more on what to expect.
U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping are expected to agree on the partial reopening of military-to-military communication channels during their meeting this week. Citing an unnamed source, Kyodo News reported on Tuesday that Biden is set to request a move and Xi is poised to accept, given that senior Chinese military officials have also supported the idea, as part of efforts to prevent miscalculations and reduce the risk of any inadvertent clashes. In a press briefing on Monday local time, the White House National Security Advisor also expressed hopes, saying China's dialogue on this issue has been constructive.
Having our two militaries in communication is the way you reduce mistake, you avoid escalation, you manage competition so it doesn't veer into conflict.
Earlier on Sunday, the senior White House official also said this issue of resuming military communication has been a priority for Biden. Beijing cut off military-to-military communications with Washington last year, after then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. Relations between the two countries escalated further in February, when the U.S. shot down a suspected Chinese spy balloon that flew over its territory. Also, the meeting between the two presidents is expected to lead to a sales breakthrough for a U.S. plane maker. As a report says, China may resume purchases of Boeing's best-selling 737 MAX aircraft, ending a long commercial freeze of more than 4 years. Bloomberg reported that the Chinese government is considering unveiling a commitment for the aircraft when Biden and Xi meet this week, as a signal of a recent thawing between the two countries. Deliveries of Boeing 737 MAX to Chinese airlines were halted, and the company has not made any significant sales of the aircraft following two deadly crashes in October 2018 and March 2019 that killed almost 350 people. Peunji, Arirang News.
Hamas has reportedly proposed a hostage swap for a temporary ceasefire deal, but whether or not Israel accepts this remains unclear. Meanwhile, the Israeli defense minister said that Hamas has lost control of Gaza. Shin-Young reports.
Hamas said on Monday local time that it was ready to release up to 70 women and children held in Gaza in return for a 5-day truce with Israel. In a message on Hamas's official Telegram channel, the group said the armistice should include a complete ceasefire and humanitarian aid for the Gaza Strip. This comes after Hamas previously halted hostage negotiations when Israeli operations closed in on the Dar al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City, leaving the medical complex with thousands of patients at breaking point without electricity and water and in need of vital aid. Thousands had to flee as gunfire and bombings continued outside its compound. The U.S. also emphasized that a ceasefire for several days was necessary for the release of the hostages.
And then ultimately, we'd like to see considerably longer pauses, days, not hours, in the context of a hostage release, and that's being actively worked on as well.
However, it remains uncertain whether Israel will accept this, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has already said there will be no ceasefire or supply of fuel into Gaza until the release of more than 200 hostages. Israel still considers Hamas as a target to destroy.
This is neither an operation nor a round, but a war to the end. This is not lip service, but from the heart and mind. If we do not finish them, it will come back.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said Monday that Hamas had lost control over the Gaza Strip as residents no longer trusted the Hamas government. Gallant said that Israel's action in Gaza continued to destroy Hamas infrastructure and kill Hamas commanders, and that the terrorists were heading south, leading to success in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, the Israel Defense Forces said they successfully took over the Palestinian Legislative Council building in Gaza, which has only served Hamas's lawmakers. An image circulating on social media shows IDF troops inside Gaza's parliament building after capturing the site. 신하영, Arirang News.
South Korea's tech exports are showing signs of recovery, with October seeing the smallest on-year decline after a series of double-digit drops. A turnaround in memory chip exports was the driving force. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
South Korea's tech exports recorded their smallest on-year decline of 2023 on the back of rising outbound shipments of memory chips. Data released by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Tuesday shows that ICT exports for October came to just over $17 billion. While this is 4.5% less than the amount recorded the same month the year before and marks an on-year decline for 16 months straight, this is the lowest decline recorded so far this year. The ministry attributed the slowing drop to the turnaround in memory chip exports, which had seen a downturn since last July. Memory chip exports in October came to just over $4.5 billion, a 1% increase in value on year as the average unit prices of DRAM and NAND flash chips have risen. It's the first time that memory chip exports, one of the country's main tech export sectors, have seen a rise in 16 months. The display sector also saw a 13% increase, coming to just under $2.3 billion, showing a consecutive incline for 3 months as mobile OLED display exports saw a rise. However, the mobile industry as a whole saw a drop of over 3% as global demand weakened, other than the premium smartphone sector, which saw a rise in exports to the US for 5 months straight. Exports of computers and telecommunication devices also fell on year by over 26% and 23% respectively, as the global economic slowdown has led to a drop in investments in infrastructure for these sectors. By country, South Korea's tech exports saw an increase in shipments to Vietnam, but a slump in shipments to China, the United States, the European Union and Japan. China is the country's biggest destination for ICT exports, responsible for over 40%. In October, semiconductor exports saw an on-year rise for the first time in 16 months as the IT industry in China showed signs of recovery. And the overall on-year decline of tech exports recorded a single-digit drop for the first time since September last year. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
President Yoon has urged the National Assembly to swiftly pass bills related to livelihood issues, specifically those addressing the refurbishment of aging planned cities in the Seoul metropolitan area. During a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, Yoon emphasized the need for Parliament to expedite the special law within the year, saying it's crucial for improvements in residential environments and managing migration demands. The special act, introduced in March, outlines plans for the reconstruction and redevelopment of the nation's first-generation planned cities, including Bundang and Ilsan, located just outside Seoul. The issue was part of Yoon's presidential campaign and has been adopted as a national agenda by the Yoon administration. The unionized workers of Seoul Metro, the operator of subway lines 1 to 8, are set to hold their second strike on Wednesday next week, the 22nd. The labor union said that further details will be provided during a press conference on Wednesday. The first strike, held last week for 2 days, was in protest of the company's plans to reduce its workforce by 13.5% by the year 2026 to address its chronic deficit. Discussions between the two sides have continued since then, but they have not yet reached a consensus. Shifting gears, BTS member Jungkook has set yet another record as a K-pop solo artist. According to Billboard on Monday, Standing Next to You, the lead-off track from his album Golden, has entered its Hot 100 chart at number 5. Jungkook is the first K-pop solo artist to have 6 songs charting on the Billboard Hot 100 and to see 3 enter the top 5 of the chart. Standing Next to You, the third in the top 5 this year, follows on from 7, which topped the chart, and 3D that also took the number 5 spot. The Billboard Hot 100 chart is based on streaming activity, generally making it more reflective of what's hot among listeners across the United States. In sports news, LG Twins won its first Korean series title in almost 3 decades Monday evening. Lee Seung-jae has the highlights.
Top of the 9th inning, 2 outs with Bae Jung-dae at bat. The 2-2 pitch from LG Twins closer Ko Woo-seok led to a weak line drive to second baseman Shin Min-jae, who caught the third and final out of the Korean series. The 6-2 win on Monday night at a sold-out Jamsil Baseball Stadium in Seoul meant that the LG Twins had finally clinched the long-awaited Korean Series title. It ended a 29-year title drought, one of the longest championship droughts in the KBL League. The 2023 regular season champions, who had a long break waiting for the KT-Wiz to eventually advance to the Korean Series, looked rusty in Game 1, losing 3-2. However, it was the long balls that brought the Twins back on track, with several dramatic come-from-behind victories that helped the Seoul-based baseball team win their title. In Game 2, down 1-0, Park Dong-won's 2-run home run in the 8th inning helped the Twins win Game 2 to even the series. In Game 3, down by 2 runs in the 9th inning, it was the Korean Series MVP and LG Twins captain Oh Ji-hwan's 3-run home run that helped his team win 8-7 and take a 2-1 series lead. Oh Ji-hwan finished the Korean Series with 3 home runs and 8 runs batted in, while also becoming the first player to hit home runs in 3 straight games in the same Korean Series. The Korean Series win sent fans into a frenzy despite the frigid November weather, and they hope they won't have to wait another 29 years for the next championship title. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The pattern of cold mornings and warm daytime conditions will persist across the nation. Do expect wide temperature gaps of more than 10 degrees for most regions. For other areas such as Cheollon and Andong, wider gaps will be seen with morning lows in the minus figures. Make sure to dress in layers to keep your body temperatures warm. Below freezing temperatures overnight may lead to some frost and ice on the roads. Sensitive vegetation may need to be covered. Also, dry spells are persisting across the east coast along with gusty offshore winds. With low moisture levels in the air, the risk of wildfire remains high. Tomorrow, Seoul and Daegu will be starting off at 2 degrees and Jeju will be fairly warm at 11 degrees. As for the daily highs, Seoul will get up to 13 degrees, Daejeon and Gwangju 14, Daegu and Gyeongju will be reaching 15 degrees. On the day of the National College Entrance Exam Day, nationwide rain is in the forecast. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the most up-to-date news. Good night.